thanks for joining. You will see a message prompted on your screen that'll just let you know we will be recording tonight's webinar. We're so excited to have you. Um, we're going to wait a couple of more minutes to see if some more folks join. But in the meantime, if you wouldn't mind, drop your name and kind of what brought you to tonight's webinar in the chat. That would be lovely. Since we can't see you all, that'll be a great way just for us to get to know a little bit more about you and engage with you um, to kind of break the ice. So I will allow the music to play a little more and then we'll get started shortly. Okay, I think we are going to get started. Hope you enjoyed the little intro music. Galen, to answer your question, yes, you all are also muted. Maybe at the end of the webinar, if we have time to kind of switch things over and potentially have everyone come on screen and then have a moment to come off mute, maybe we'll do that as well. But for now, if you have any questions, please drop them in the chat or any comments. Let's use the chat as our way to kind of engage. So, shout out to everyone that's been dropping their names and what they're looking forward to out of tonight and what brought them here. We're really excited. We hope you are able to walk away with some helpful tips and enjoy this series that we have. So, without further ado, welcome to what we like to call a mental health webinar series. We're going to be doing three parts to this, and Brittany, who is our facilitator, will be the one spearheading each series. But particularly tonight, we're going to talk about preventative self care, which is under this huge umbrella of how do we prioritize our well being. I know it's a really, really hot topic right now, but sometimes with it being such a big topic, there is not a lot of tactical ways that you can think about walking away and actually applying them. So our goal is to be able to kind of provide a better, useful, functional guidebook to help us out in knowing what it's like to prioritize our well-being. So um, just to kind of get things going, some webinar norms that we have for tonight are um, make sure you keep your mic muted. They're already muted for you, but when the mics do turn on, if we have time, keep it muted just to kind of help cut down any background noise that there may have. And then please use the chat function that we have in there for you. So here we go. This is Brittany, and she's going to come off mute and tell a lot more about herself, but I wanted to formally introduce her. We had kind of came across her one of the wonderful organizations she's part of, which is called the Color Collective of Kansas City, and she co-founded with another one of her peers, and it is an online resource that has a group of social workers, counselors, marriage counselors, and therapists of color, where it's like an incubator where you can go online, see the directory, and connect with them, see their bio, their pictures look really relatable. It's not no scammy medical looking pictures like, oh, this is someone who's cool. I want to get to know them. They look like me, they have a vibe like me. I want to build a relationship with, my therapist or my counselor, which is really, really cool. And so we thought, what better person to kind of bring on and speak to these topics than someone who's well versed in the field and also who knows all about what it's like to have people of color speak into these topics. So, Brittany, I'll let you speak more to who you are and what you're excited to share with us and just kind of dive right into the webinar.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much to Autumn and to Kaufman for having me out today. I'm really excited to learn with you and to explore what preventative self-care really can look like for you, because it is, like she said, there's not a lot of technical work around it. So hopefully we'll get to explore that today. So as she mentioned, I'm the founder of a it's not a company because we don't like make money or do money things with it, but Color Collective KC. So if you go to colorcollectivekc.org, you can explore all the therapists in the Kansas City area. But I also have my own private practice called Rise Counseling and Consulting, and it's located in like the Merriam, Shawnee area. And it's small because during the day I work for a school district doing professional development for teachers. So I was really passionate about helping people of color find therapists of color if that's what they're looking for, because anything that removes barriers is important to me, right? I want everyone to have access to quality care, and anything that gets rid of a barrier for that, I want to do that. And Autumn, you can keep sharing. That's totally fine. On my free time, when I do my own preventive self-care, I spend a lot of time getting on my partner's nerves. I like to hang out with friends, spoil my nephews, and I read a lot of like young adult fantasy novels. So if you're into young adult books, please, we can chat. I love to read them. And this summer I'm looking forward to traveling some more. So I'd love to hear a little bit about you. And I know you all put like your name and your class and sort of what brought you to the session. I'm wondering if you would be able to share like where you're located, if you're in KC or outside of the area, something you're looking forward to this year, and then controversial, if you believe that pineapple belongs on pizza. So I'll put that in the chat too, so you can. Sorry, I was typing and I have a loud keyboard, so I muted myself. Location, looking forward to, and then pineapple on. So while you're typing in your answers, I'll just review our learning objectives for today. We're going to define a few things: self-care, self-compassion, and burnout. We're going to help you differentiate between what I call like preventative or preventive self-care and other forms of self-care. And then hopefully by the end of our time together, you will have identified 3 preventive self-care practices that you would like to try for yourself and put like into practice in your daily life. So before we jump into any content, I always like to just encourage us all to be part of what I call a brave space. And that is really a place where we come together to have maybe some tough conversations and hear each other out, even when that might be uncomfortable. So today we're talking about self-care, and that's a fairly like light, chill conversation. But when we start talking about boundaries and access to mental health in our later sessions, that might get a little uncomfortable for some folks. And I ask for a brave space because I know that often people of color and people from other marginalized communities don't get to really experience any safe spaces. So I'm not going to promise that, but I do hope that we can all be brave together. So I think I started something with the pineapple on pizza, and limited amounts of pineapple. Okay, I love that. I love the balance you're trying to achieve there. So, all right. So we're going to jump right in. So more than a buzzword. And so the reason I gave this title is because I work with teachers, and I'm always talking to them about self-care, and they are so sick of hearing those two words put together that I get like automatic eye rolls, head shaking, like literal, like they go limp like a toddler. They're like, oh my gosh, not again, self-care. But hopefully when we talk about it in this way today, it won't feel so hokey and so commercialized, which it totally has become. So when we think about like what self-care means, it really is like taking the time to do things that help you live well and improve your overall health. And health has a lot of different meanings, right? And we'll talk a little bit about that later. But doing these things can help to manage stress, lower your risk of physical and mental illness, and increase your energy. So as we're learning today, I would love for you to practice some self-care, and that if you need to like go to the restroom, that you just go. If you need to get a drink of water, you just go do that, right? You do what you need so that you can be comfortable and present today. Oh, sorry, can you go back to self-care? So when I say the word self-care, what comes up for you? What are some things that you think of when you hear that term, self-care? Ooh, okay. I like that, cleaning your room to get your mind right. Mm, yeah, spending time, being kind. Oh, I see. So Lisa saying something I have to find time to do. So it sometimes feels like another task on your list. Yes. Oh, yes. I love that, Paw, connecting with a part of myself that I love. Yes, and self-care is all those things, right? So when we dig into the next term, Autumn, if you can go forward, self-compassion, what does that mean to you when you hear the word compassion? Have you ever felt true compassion, and maybe that was towards yourself or someone else? What does self-compassion bring up for you? Oh yeah, I see most of you are in the KC area. And so Galen, absolutely. Today was a great day to be outside. It was so nice. So while you think about what self-compassion means to you, I'll share a little bit about um, the definition I have for it. And it's really directing those feelings, right, of compassion, feelings of warmth and caring inward, right, towards yourself. And in order for that to really work, you first have to notice that something's not right, right? You have to first notice that you need that compassion. And it's different from self-pity. So, and what I think is important for us to acknowledge is that suffering, right, is sort of part of the human condition, right? We all experience pain and joy, loss and pride. And often we experience those things in equal measure over the course of our lives, right? Often when I talk about self-care, I describe life as like these waves, right? And one of my favorite authors talks about, right, the waves of life, right, as they present what they present. Oh, grace in a way. Yes, I love that. Giving yourself space to feel. Yeah. So you can move forward. Um, so Kristen Neff wrote a book called Self-Compassion, and she is sort of like this guru of something called mindful self-compassion. And she says that there's three components to being like truly compassionate towards oneself. And that's like kindness versus self-judgment. So you are not perfect and you never will be. And that's okay. It's impossible to be perfect and also be like a human being. And if you are trying to achieve perfection, you are setting yourself up for this sort of like those feelings of like suffering and those negative emotions and negative sort of self-expression, no matter how hard you work toward it, because it's just not possible to achieve perfection. Um, the next one is common humanity versus isolation. So again, suffering is part of the human experience. And in recognizing that we all suffer, right? That we have all experienced those hard days, those hard feelings, trauma, even, that we sort of pull ourselves out of that isolation and in community, right, with other people. Mindfulness over identification. And mindfulness has also become one of those like big buzzwords, and we're not going to focus too much on that. But just the idea that mindfulness requires us to be non-judgmental of our own stuff, of our own processes, our own thoughts, and that when we are mindful of them and acknowledging them, we're not suppressing or denying them, right? So self-compassion and self-care isn't about like never feeling bad. It's about like process, allowing yourself the space to feel those things, and connect with those things and not sweeping them away, but also not being overtaken by them. So it's, again, sort of finding that balance. So it's not self-esteem because, right, it's not evaluative. Like it's not something that I can be like, ooh, yes, I get an A+ in self-compassion. And it's really rooted in that idea that everyone deserves compassion and understanding, even you, even me, right? We, even ourselves, we deserve that self-compassion. So you can go ahead. All right. What do you think about this word, burnout? It's my favorite thing to talk about, amazingly. Yeah, the big B. And again, working with teachers and school staff, and I went to undergrad where we had this huge nursing program. So a lot of my friends are nurses. And so I've been talking to them a lot about burnout, especially right now after 2 years of like living in this pandemic. What does that look like? So have you ever felt burned out before? And maybe you haven't felt burnt out, but you felt languishing. Like burnout is like part of exhaustion, but languishing is just feeling like unmotivated and unfocused. Yeah. And for me, I see languishing as sort of like the precursor to burnout. It's like the build up to that. So you can go ahead and move on. But when we think about burnout, yeah, that feeling defeated, it's that exhaustion, right? And so I try to explain it like it's not just like you're tired, because that's part of burnout, right? Being tired, but it's like my bones are tired, like my hair is tired, every part of my body is tired, like that sort of exhaustion. Um, it's an emotional exhaustion too, right? You feel like any little thing presents this sort of like inability to cope with it, even though regularly you have lots of skills to like manage hard things. And again, that like lack of energy to manage life. Alienation from activities, and that can be work activities, social activities, just fun activities. You might find your job and your life like increasingly stressful and frustrating, right? Like I said, any little thing starts to feel like just too much. And often, and my own symptoms of burnout revolve around this one, where I feel very cynical and sort of like ineffective. Like I can do trainings all day and no one cares and it's not going to matter. Like that's sort of like the internal burnout in my brain when I get to feeling that way. And at the same time, you might be feeling like you're distancing yourself from your work, right? But also that like inability to perform at work. So those everyday tasks, like getting to emails, returning phone calls. At work, at home, it might be like making meals or taking care of family members. All those things start to like slip away, and you feel really negatively about your tasks. But then you also feel really negatively about yourself when you don't do the tasks, right? So burnout starts to like feed on itself after a while. Okay, we can move on. So while we were talking about self-care, I love how broad you guys went with it right away. Often when I talk about this, people think about like spa days or mani-pedis or massages, right? And all those things can absolutely be part of like your self-care. So I don't want to say never do that. But we really have to focus on like what I'm calling preventive self-care, which is like these like small things that keep us going until the next spa day, right? And if I mentioned the waves of life, we need to fill up, right? When we're at the top, we have to fill ourselves up. So when things get hard, right, we have something to keep us afloat. So you can go on. And so it's really about those little tiny things that you do throughout the day, throughout the week, throughout the month that prevent and manage those symptoms of burnout. So imagine your car, right? If you drive, or imagine a car if you don't. And when we think about self-care on this right-hand side, I've got what I call reactive self-care, right? So that's like you get into a wreck, you take your car to the shop. We have proactive self-care, which are like the new tires and headlights that you buy regularly, oil changes every few months, and then like kind of regular engine maintenance. So reactive is like something bad happens and I do something to make it better. That's reactive self-care. Proactive self-care is like, I'm going to do these larger things, right, regularly to keep myself from the bad thing, from the burnout. Preventive self-care are those really tiny things that you do like every day, every week, like putting gas in the car, which is a challenge right now because these gas prices are out of control, right? Windshield wipers, right? You turn them on when it rains and it keeps you right from that burnout, that bad thing. Washing your car. I'm not very good at that one. I have to work on that part of car care. And then even things like scraping your car in the winter, right? We do those things in order to prevent, right, a wreck or that sort of burnout. So now think about yourself, and go to the next one, Autumn. Think about yourself. Reactive self-care is like when we get sick, taking time off of work, or when we're feeling so overwhelmed we can't do anything, taking time off of work. That's reactive, right? We're reacting to something. Proactive self-care are doing like vacations, which vacations are 5 or more days, and then like a long weekend, right? Which is like less than 5 days. That's what I differentiate those two. And the reason I do that is because they say your brain doesn't go into vacation mode until after the 5th day. So if you want to like really get the benefits of a vacation, you want to take one that's a little longer if possible. Other forms of proactive self-care are doctors and dentist appointments, right? We do those regularly, right? Or we should be, right? To keep our body healthy and make sure there's nothing wrong. And then spa days, right? If we can throw a couple of those in. But those preventive self-care strategies that we're going to use that are small and easy and manageable are things like eating regularly, right? And hopefully fairly healthy food if we can. Getting enough sleep, or if we're not getting enough sleep, working to create like a program of what I call sleep hygiene so that we can improve our sleep. Engaging in things that we love, our hobbies, our, sort of extracurricular activities that we have even as adults. Moving our bodies. And so I use the term moving our bodies because some people, when I say the word exercise, they're like, well, I don't really go to the gym. It doesn't have to be the gym. Moving your body can be like dancing in your kitchen while you're heating up dinner. It can be doing some stretches when you get out of bed in the morning, right? It can be taking a walk over your lunch break with coworkers, right? Moving your body means a lot of different things. And then that sort of like healthy socialization. And that's been really hard over the past 2 years, especially if you're someone that either isn't willing, right, to kind of go out and be out, or isn't able to based on like your own personal health concerns. So engaging with friends, engaging with new people, even for us introverts, that can be a really important part of preventive self-care too. So the other thing about preventive self-care is that it's active, right? It's not like something you do, right? It's not something you go and do and then it's done. It's something that you have to be constantly doing, right? To like keep yourself going. And so ways that you can do that are to play. And I don't mean like play with toys, even though I am a play therapist and I play with toys like all the time because I work with kids. But I mean like incorporating play into your day. That can be like singing in the car. I know everyone's playing Wordle right now. That's a form of play. Um, you might have a pet and you play with your pet. One way that I have gotten my very grumpy partner to engage and play at home is I buy like little card games, and I brought one to show you guys. This one's called One Gotta Go. And so I buy like little card games like this, and we'll do them like at dinner or in the evenings while we're watching TV. And it's a great way of like getting us to like engage with one another. Say no. And so before you agree to something, make sure you've really thought about it. Does it align to your values? Is it important to you? And when we talk about boundaries in our next session, we'll dig into this a little bit deeper. Unplug. And I know I sound like a mom when I say this, but really like put your phone down. It's going to be okay. And one trick that I had to put into practice during the pandemic actually was I was plugging my phone up for the night, like in a separate room. So I would plug it in the living room and then I would go to sleep right in the bedroom. And obviously, right, I'm not saying don't use your phone at all. I'm just saying to create a space in your home where maybe your phone doesn't belong. And there's lots of reasons for that, right? There's parts of being on a phone, whether that's social media, games on your phone, that activates the reward center of our brain. The same part of our brain that's like part of like the addiction process. And there's also, right, all the blue light studies about how it interrupts the way that we fall asleep and how we're sleeping. So unplugging is great for a lot of those reasons. And then I'm a therapist. I can't help it. I would be remiss if I didn't give a presentation and expect you to do some deep breathing. But I promise that it works. And so in order to do like the really soothing, like restorative types of deep breath, you want to make sure that it's breathing in through your nose and then out through your mouth. And then play around with what feels the best. Some people do a longer inhale and a shorter exhale, or the reverse, right? Where they're doing a shorter inhale and then a really long exhale. And I've heard from people that both feel really good. It just depends on you and what you like. And remember that those deep breaths should really fill up your belly when you're breathing, not your chest. So you want to breathe deep for that sort of restorative breath. And then lastly, I really encourage folks to engage their senses. So one thing that I committed to a couple years ago was like, I'm not going to purchase any clothing that doesn't feel good when I touch it, right? If it doesn't feel good, then I'm not going to put it on my body. So touch is a great way of like engaging your senses throughout the day. And that can even be like wrapping yourself in a soft blanket. I always am going to encourage you to like use your sense of smell, because it's one of the only senses that goes directly to your brain. So when you're really stressed out, if you can use that olfactory sense, that sense of smell, you can really bring your brain and your anxiety down just through that one sense. Something else that I've had a lot of people find success with is adding like fruit slices to water, right? They're like, well, I want to drink more water. I know it's good for me, but I don't like the way it tastes because it don't taste like that. So add some fruit slices and make it a little exciting. Yes, we'll talk about play more in just a second. And so, what was the last one? We did touch, we did taste. Oh, and then surrounding yourself with art, and colors that you like. I know, like, when we moved into our house, this room that I'm in was like this bubblegum pink, and it worked for a while, but then I finally had to say, nope, I need a totally different color in here because the pink is just not for me. And so the more that you can do that, right, the more you're creating a space for yourself that feels really good. So Autumn asked about more types of play. Obviously, if you have kids or pets, those are really great and easy ways for us to like engage in play because it feels a lot safer. But for adults, right, I really like it when adults participate in like trivia teams or in a lot of places they have like leagues where you can play softball or kickball, right? And it seems sort of like, well, those are just sports, but no, like sports are kind of an organized way that we play together as adults. And so if you're interested in those things, I would highly encourage you to check them out. Again, I mentioned Wordle, but if that's the kind of play you enjoy, right? Like word games or logic puzzles or crosswords, like buy yourself some of those books at the Dollar Tree. Do some crosswords with yourself, at the end of the day. One way that like I consider reading play for me because it's something I really enjoy. It's a way that I lose myself, right? When I'm reading a book, I'm in the book. I'm not like in my life. So that's sort of what play can do, right? It helps us escape a little bit. I'm trying to think of some other really good examples of play. Oh, if you play video games, of course, right? If you play video games, that's a great way to play. It can also be a great way to engage in that like healthy socialization with like your peers, right? So you and your friends all play video games together. And to make video games more playful and less competitive, I always encourage you to play games that are like at a lower developmental level. So Mario Kart, fantastic game for play, right? Call of Duty, not so much a little competitive. um, Minecraft, right? Great game for play. Lets you be super creative. Halo, not a great game for play because, right, you're getting into that competitive. It's all about like achieving that particular goal. So I always encourage you to think about games or Animal Crossing, great game for play, right? Because there's not a whole lot of stress built inside those games. Now, if you're a naturally competitive person, like my partner, all of those games are going to be stressful for you because you're going to want to win no matter what. But if you can let go of some of that, right, and just enjoy the experience, it will feel more like play. So I love that you asked that, Autumn, because it is hard, right? It's hard for us to really let go of some of those ideas, right, around like work, right? That if I care enough about my job, if I care enough about what I'm doing or the goals that I have, like I will work at them until I meet those goals. And there's nothing wrong with having a goal and working toward it. However, um, we have to remember that we can't achieve a goal if we're burnt out. So often, right, like especially historically marginalized populations, people of color, LGBTQIA, right, like we're sort of fed these messages that tell us that our value, right, our inherent value as a human being is in what we can produce, right, and what we can put out into the world and what we can provide for other people in terms of service or product or whatever that is. And often we feel like if we're not sort of meeting that, then we're failing, right? We are seen as like lazy or slow or deadbeat, right? And so we really push back against that. We're threatened by the stereotype, right, that people created. And in order to sort of combat that, we work ourselves right into burnout. And so these messages about like grind and hustle culture, while I appreciate hustle, I really do, it really comes from this place of like white supremacy and like capitalism. And the idea that that is where you get your worth is really damaging to you, right? You start to believe like, if I can't achieve this, then where do I get my worth? If I can't meet this goal, if I can't produce these outcomes, then am I really valuable? And so we have to really step back from that idea that work equals value, our value, and move toward the idea that our value is inherent, right? we are born with value as like a human being, and it's not something that we can earn more of or lose, right? Our value is constant throughout our lifetime. You can move on to the next slide. So I've really found in my own sort of like struggle with this idea around like finding my own inherent value and not attaching my value to work, which is really hard. Like I struggle with it too. So I say that from a genuine like place of vulnerability with you all. I found the NAP ministry. You can follow them on social media. I think specifically Twitter and Instagram. But it was founded in 2016 by Trisha Hersey. And really their whole goal is to promote this idea that rest equals resistance. And when she says rest, she means anything that connects your mind to your body. So walking, like they do these like performance art things where they just like go somewhere and take a nap. Like they all just like lay down and sleep. And so in talking and in preparing this presentation, I visited her because whenever I'm feeling like, oh, I need some work, I go visit, her stuff and read it. And she says, right, to the how to avoid burnout and self-care tips have to include this like focus on capitalism, patriarchy, and white supremacy, because these are the systems that are causing stress. And it's not, right, your lack of a facial or a nice new pillow, right? It's not that you can like self-care your way out of an oppressive system. But if we don't do these like self-care things that keep us going, we're never going to be able to like dismantle some of those systems because they're the ones causing us a lot of this stress. So hopefully if this rings something in you, you'll seek out the NAP ministry. They've always sort of, they always hit me where I need it when I'm looking for some of that. All right, so I'd like for you to imagine, if you're comfortable, close your eyes, but I want you to imagine like a perfect, realistic day. And notice I said a day, not the day, because you have multiple kinds of perfect days. So imagine a perfect and realistic day. And I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to think about your perfect day. And if you want to share it in the chat, you can. Okay. So hopefully you've got a perfect day in your head. And I'd like for you in that day to try to identify the following, and I'll put them in the chat too. So I want you to try to identify one thing in that perfect day that brought you joy. I'd like you to identify one thing that brought you calm or relaxation. So joy and calm. Oh, thank you, Autumn. Oh, butterflies. And then the last thing I want you to identify in that, like imagining a perfect day, is one thing that like kind of set your future self up, right, for success. And I'll explain that in just a minute, but process that for a second. What's something in that imagining that set future you up for success or pushed you right toward a goal? Okay, so while you're typing or sharing what you're comfortable sharing, um, I asked that last part about setting your future self up for success because part of self-care is like taking care of who you're going to be tomorrow. And so an example is on Sunday nights, my partner and I, we pick out all of our clothes for the week that we're going to wear that week, and we like iron them or steam them or like get them ready to wear for the week. And we do that every Sunday evening. And it's important for us. One is like, it's kind of like time we spend together. We talk about our weeks coming up. And then I also do this because I am not a morning person. And in order to take care of morning Brittany, night Brittany, Sunday night Brittany has to have her stuff together so that I can get my clothes ready, right? It helps me get out the door easier. So yes, a full night's, thank you, Jessica, your puppy, a calm atmosphere, and a full night's rest. Yeah, because that full night's rest, right, sets you up for success the next day. So while you're thinking about, right, those things, right, that brought you joy, brought you calm, and set you up for success, I want you to make sure that you can incorporate those things or a version of them, right, into your everyday or every week, right? I do mine every Sunday. Is anyone willing to share like how they might incorporate those three things? Hi, Galen. Nice to meet you. What kind of puppy do you have, Jessica? I saw that you put your puppy on there.
Hey, Brittany, I'm going to take folks off of mute. I'm going to allow them to talk,
Perfect.
so maybe that'll make it easier to get
Yeah.
some responses. So,
Yeah, let's do
um,
that.
everyone, you will get kind of a notification that'll say that you can unmute yourselves. And so, feel free to come off mute and interact um, to this big imagine question and how you
Yeah.
can
Oh, a
implement those
husky
things.
boxer. I bet she's so cute. Pets are so regulating. I just love that.
We're answering the last question, correct?
Yeah. So how can you incorporate, things that bring you joy, things that bring you calm, and things that set you up for success into your everyday?
I think for me, it would be like setting myself up, like you said, like, putting up your clothes
Mm.
for the week after. So I think for me, that would definitely work for me, like doing my homework like 3 days before it's due or something, things like
Mhm.
that.
Yeah. And I think it's really important that we, again, when we're trying to like make those shifts in terms of preventive self-care, we're trying to incorporate those things. We give ourselves some self-compassion, right? That it's not going to be perfect every time. You're going to mess it up. You'll forget. You are going to experience burnout in your life. But that's when you have to build that like self-compassion muscle up to give yourself that grace, right? What do you need to try again and move forward? So, if you're wanting to make sure you get your homework done 3 days in advance, what sort of things do you need to set up for yourself to do that, right? Do you need to put the deadline earlier in your planner or in your phone, right? So really thinking about those like small logistical things can be helpful too. So like for getting our clothes ready, he usually is the one who says like, hey, wrap it up. It's time to get ready for the week. But I need that reminder, right? Because I don't really want to do it. But I do it because I know it's going to be helpful. And I saw Harmony, you unmuted. Did you want to share?
Yeah. I was gonna say one way for me is if I'm thinking about something, just doing it right then and there. Especially if it doesn't take that long. I forgot where I heard that, but if it doesn't take more than 5 minutes or something, just do it then.
Mm-hmm.
I also know, kind of like accountability partners. So like you just said, your partner reminding you like, hey, it's time to, keep it pushing.
Mhm.
Kind of someone who's on the same, I guess like journey, not necessarily journey, but kind of like same mindset.
Yeah.
That's one. It was one more I was gonna say. Prioritization. I think for me, just realizing that sometimes there's a lot of things that I want to do, but then when I really like write it all down, look at it, there's things that I really, really want to do, and other things that can just wait. So making sure.
Yeah. And I think, we talked about that a little bit when we talked about like saying no, right? So
Mhm.
when you say you're going to do something, making sure that it is going to get you closer to like who you want to be or where you want to be, right? That helps you like streamline and prioritize, just like you were talking about. And when we talk about boundaries in a few weeks, we'll definitely talk more about that. Anyone else want to share? Okay. You can go ahead, Autumn. Those are some sources I found. And then I think if you all have questions for me, I'm happy to answer if I have an answer.
Well, yeah, like Brittany said, this is kind of the time of the end of our webinar. One thing that I really love when me and Brittany first started talking about doing this is that she wanted to keep it simple, keep it short, and keep it sweet so that the thing that could stand out the most was like the engagement with you all. And so here in front of you, you have her contact information and for you to reach out to her personally with her Rise Consulting, which is a big shout out to her for being able to leverage that and being able to spearhead that in her own way. That's a big thing. And then also her partnership with her peer with the KC Color Collective. If you are looking for an extra resource, an extra kind of like jet in your to fuel your backpack, because that's what I see therapists as. Feel free to check them out. And we have everybody's information for who signed up, so we'll be sure to kind of send out this contact information as well then. So, yeah, but we
Oh
that's so cool.
yeah, I was there.
So we'll leave the floor open, maybe a minute or so more if anyone has any questions or final thoughts, and then I just have one more slide to share with you all about what's up and coming next.
Oh, and I have Harmony, go ahead.
I think it's funny that you can see me like unmute myself. I just want to say thank you for like making space to talk to us today, especially because I screenshot. Is it screenshot or screenshotted? Whatever. Past tense screenshot. The self-care is active page. And there's a lot of just helpful things here. As far as just different ways you can, take care of self. So I really just want to say I appreciate that. So thank you.
I'm so glad it was useful. Like I said, I think sometimes when we start talking about self-care, it feels very like kind of surfacey, go get your nails done, do your hair. And those things are important and you should do them. But I think sometimes self-care is about like finding those small things, right, that like bring you joy, help you feel calm, because it shouldn't cost anything to take care of yourself. Right. Like that's something that we do and something we need to do, right, to stay healthy. And one thing that like I tell people all the time is like, I can't argue with the man if I'm too tired. And my favorite thing to do is argue with the man about, these systems he's got set up for us. So, anyone
Love
else
that.
want to share? Yeah, thanks.
I put that in the chat. It shouldn't cost anything to take care of myself. I
Yeah.
love that.
Mm-hmm.
I will share like a couple of takeaways I took that I really enjoyed. The first thing was the unplug. I know you hear about that all the time, but the useful or more functional thing that I see myself really applying, it's like the placing the phone in another place. Because you said you need to create a space where the phone is not allowed. So like what I am going to do, not try, what I am going to do tonight is I'm going to keep my phone plugged in the bathroom and not in my bedroom. I think that's like the most tactical thing ever. And I'm really excited to try that.
Yeah.
And then Another thing that I thought was really, really cool is about the play. I never thought about it that way, but like, yeah, when you do sing, you do dance, you feel good. And yeah, right, Harmony? I think it'll be cool. And then I do have a daughter, and so I'm so much of the time I'm caught up in my own thoughts about things that I need to get done or
Mhm.
where I'm not at in my life, and it affects her for when she wants to say, "Hey, mommy, play with me," and I don't open up that space to do that, not
Mhm.
realizing how much it'll help me as well as her. So I thought that was really good too.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing.
Yeah, and one of the things we know in play therapy is that, especially for kids, but I think adults too, play is a language, right? That's how we describe it. Like play is a language, toys are words, I'm an interpreter, right? And like play is the way that we process those feelings that we don't have words for. And so it's a really great way of just like being with yourself again, and that sort of like non-judgmental, right? Because there's not a wrong way to play. I mean, your kids might tell you otherwise. If you have kids, they'll tell you if you're doing something right or wrong. But really, there's not a right or wrong way to play. So I love that you're going to try that because I think play is super important to like being a human being.
Mm,
And it's a great way to connect with other people. So
yeah, thank you.
yeah, you're so
Yeah,
welcome.
I agree. I'll say one more thing. I think sometimes we as people, well, I don't want to say we take ourselves too serious because I mean, you're as serious as you want to be, but like it's okay to be like an adult and playing, you know, and like having conversations with other adults or even kids and just having fun. Yeah, I just wish we would just have way more fun. So
Yes. Well, in the name of having more fun, can I have a couple of minutes, Autumn?
Yes, I'm gonna
Okay.
go ahead and stop the
Yes.
recording. So
Okay. So I'm going to share